I've got my black magic set up, so so I'm looking flawless.
I've got my Dell.
Their ear Dell. I heard that Dell, they almost shot the first Star Wars movie on a Dell.
Wow.
But it hadn't been invented yet. That's the stupidest joke I've ever done. I'm gonna pour myself some tea.
Okay.
Now seems like a good time to introduce welcome to Tea and Tauntauns, a Star Wars podcast.
Welcome.
My name's Nicole, and I'm going to be one of the hosts.
My name is Amanda, and I will be the other host.
Let's make this as awkward as possible. I'm going to pour myself a cuppa.
Okay. So
Did you already pour yourself a cuppa?
No, I didn't. It's still steeping.
That's okay. Oh, Jesus. I'm pouring tea all over my lap. Hang on.
Our inaugural episode, and there's already disaster.
It's not off to a good start. I just poured hot tea all over my Nightmare on Elm Street lap blanket.
That's better than all over your lap. That's
true. At least Freddie blocked some of the hot scalding hot water. So what are you drinking today?
I have a Zen green tea because I'm a maniac, even though it's almost 7 o'clock at night.
I'm drinking black tea.
You maniac.
I'm a maniac. Oh my God, it's so cute. Look at that mug. Okay, so for those of you that are listening, of course, we're doing a vidcast and a podcast. So if you want to watch the vidcast, you got to go to Critical Crop Top's YouTube channel to watch the vidcast. But if you're on the podcast, can you hold up that mug for me again so I can describe it? Unless you want to describe it. I don't want to take that from you.
Actually, I'd rather hear you describe it.
Okay, if I get the name of the creature wrong, please don't at me.
Sure.
It looks like a lemur.
Yeah.
So it's a lemur on a mug, a very brightly colored lemur. It looks like he's wearing some kind of like Elvis Costello tie and also some very large round glasses.
Yeah.
It's very cute. I've just got a standard teacup here.
I'm really excited because I have so many interesting, fun mugs and hardly anybody to show them to. And so now I've decided each week to have a different exciting mug.
I am thrilled about this. I can't even tell you how thrilled I am. So listeners, welcome to the first episode. If you're listening to this is the first one. We're just going to talk a little bit about why we're doing this podcast and a little bit about us, and we're just introducing ourselves. Really, that's what has brought us here today. Besides tea, so you're gonna steep, and we're gonna do this.
Oh no, I poured. I'm steeped now. I'm ready.
You've steeped. You've steeped. So I thought we could start by talking a little bit about ourselves.
Okay.
First of all, I hope this is not meant to be a secret, but I feel like the listeners should know that we are sisters.
Yep.
So that there's that dynamic going on.
Mm-hmm.
So that can be expected. So Nicole, that's me. Here's some stuff about me. I'm a filmmaker and a writer and an actor. And I actually have been podcasting for a while now. This will be my 4th podcast that I have hosted. My friend Sarah and I host the Feminine Mistake podcast, which we started with Hillary Arheath. This is season 5. We're in with that podcast, and then Sarah and I also do a podcast called the Adam and Andy podcast, where we watch Adam Driver and Andy Samberg movies. And then for 1 year, we did a podcast called the Georgia Made podcast, where we only watch Georgia films. Of course, we live in Georgia, you and I. So I've been podcasting for a while, and why don't you tell the people a little bit about yourself, and then we'll talk a little bit about maybe our relationship to Star Wars.
Okay,
so
I am Dr. Amanda Ellwanger.
And you have to call her doctor, like, at all times. She makes us
doctor.
do it.
Yeah, my kids, they call me doctor.
She won't even pass us. You know, I can't get a paper towel or anything from her without calling her doctor first.
I worked hard for that title.
You did. It's true.
I am an anthropologist and an ecologist. And I'm primarily interested in looking at things in my research relating to human animal relationships, especially human primate relationships, and sort of any animal species that is really good at living sort of like on the edge of human society. The ones that just like know how to dig in. The jerks. I like the jerk animal species.
Maybe that's why we get along so much. I too live on the edges of human society.
Yeah, the jerks of the animal kingdom. So, what I've been working on the last couple years is looking at. I've been working on a project on human baboon relationships, basically through ecology and culture and social network analysis. So that's me.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've decided to do this Star Wars podcast. So I wanted to talk a little bit about like our relationship generally to Star Wars. So do you want to go first? Should I go first?
I can keep rolling.
You keep rolling. You're on a roll. I don't want to stop you.
Okay, so we grew up with Star Wars and all things like a little bit nerd in our house.
Like literally, like in the 1980s, Star Wars was like at its apex of it's reached several apexes of coolness now being a time, I think, but in the 80s.
Would you call this like the third wave?
Oh my God, I haven't even considered the waves, but yeah, I guess this would be the third wave of Star Wars. Or maybe if we could call them eras or
so we had them all on VHS.
Yes, we did.
We watched them all over and over again.
Yes.
We had all the little Star Wars figurines in the Ewok Village.
We did have the Ewok Village, which I believe is still at Mom's house.
In the basement, yep.
In the basement. We grew up with as they call it, the OT, or the original trilogy. We were kids when that stuff was out. And I watched it obsessively. And when I say obsessively, I'm not at all being hyperbolic. I watched it every single day. I know all the words to all of the movies.
And for anybody who doesn't know Nicole, that's sort of like a core part of your personality is to do everything to the max and a little bit obsessively. But Star Wars has been sort of like a through line from your childhood through your entire life.
Yes. I think that's an accurate description. I put on interests like a person, like they're my personality. I take something and I obsess thoroughly. I get in deep. And there are things that I've gotten in and dug into and been like, this, I must live and breathe this every moment of my life. There are things that I've had like that. But the one thing that is constant is Star Wars. So, and I have waves of it. Sometimes I'm more into it and sometimes I'm less into it. And it'll just be kind of dormant and then waiting for me to obsess over it again. But because of all the content coming out recently, it's my obsession is really crested.
Yeah, I would say through the third wave, your obsession has reemerged stronger than ever. And I've really never seen you so heightened.
Are you concerned?
No, because
is this an intervention?
No, I think that this is all things considered a pretty healthy thing to obsess about.
I would think so, right?
Yeah.
I hope. So yeah, we grew up with the movies. And would you say that you were as into it as I was?
No. No, I mean, I love it. Love it.
How can you not? It's amazing.
I don't know that, like, personality wise, I get so deeply obsessed about like anything to the level that you get obsessed about it.
Okay, that's fair. Do you obsess about things? Do you have things you obsess about?
Definitely. Yeah.
Okay. Would you care to share? Anything?
Well, obviously, I would say like a core personality trait for me would be like not knowing when to quit.
Okay, fair.
And that explains how I finally finished my PhD.
I feel like you have to not know when to quit when you're trying to finish a PhD, right?
Yeah. Yep. Monkeys, ecology, and sci-fi fantasy genre. I almost exclusively, when I'm consuming media, it's of the fantasy or sci-fi genre.
Right. And so what are some shows, for example, that you like maybe that I have not watched?
The Witcher, which I think you've fallen asleep through.
I watched the first
anytime
one.
you've watched it.
Listen, Henry Cavill is a beautiful piece of wood, but I did not care for his acting. And I was bored as hell. Sorry, America. I'm sorry, listeners. If you really like The Witcher, you can try to convince me to keep watching it, but I just could not.
It works. I feel the same way that I don't love his sort of acting style. It feels very stiff to me.
Yeah.
But it works in The Witcher because that's the character.
Fair.
Firefly.
I've seen Firefly. I think I like it because it has a bit of a Star Wars flavor to me. It has. I like it. They're both space westerns.
Yeah.
And I'm not really into westerns per se, but I'm into space westerns apparently. You know.
Yeah. I loved Harry Potter for a long time.
Yes.
I would say at my zenith, I probably loved it as much as you love Star Wars.
Right.
But
so Harry Potter was more your thing.
I pulled back a bit from it in recent years.
That's reasonable.
We've talked a lot about this, and one of the issues is that the content is just not growing with the audience.
Sure. But I believe that you could say that Star Wars also, I mean, if we rewind back to, hop in our DeLorean and let's go back to the early to mid 1980s. Yes. When we were watching Star Wars on VHS all the time. So we had the toys, we had it was an obsession, a worldwide obsession. Right. And I still have the figures. Some of them are actually hanging out. I know I'm looking up. It seems absurd.
You look like you're looking to the heavens.
I'm looking at. I've actually got a shelf up here with a bunch of Star Wars, old original, like the original Kenner Star Wars figures on them. So it felt like at the end of once Return of the Jedi was out, it was like, that's it. Like George Lucas is not making any more Star Wars, and so the obsession was really only like centered around that media. Now there was what I wasn't aware of at the time was there was tons of all this expanded universe stuff, which is now considered to be the Legends stuff. So I have done a little bit of reading of the Legends comics. So I guess to circle back to what our relationship to Star Wars is, I have seen the movies. Both of us have watched all the live action TV shows up to this point, which really just consists of The Mandalorian, I guess. I'm not as deep into the animated series, although I'm watching The Bad Batch right now, and I love it. I've been watching the Clone Wars, and I'm trying to get more into the animated side of things. I've read a ton of Star Wars books. I started reading them like sort of when Disney took over and made these are the canon books and comics. I've read like the Charles Soule, like Darth Vader comics, which I absolutely love. And I've read some of the Star Wars comics. I've read the Rise of Kylo Ren comic. I've read a bunch of the novels. And so so basically we had the 1980s and then it was like no more Star Wars and everybody was
there was like a dead zone.
Yeah, where it was like, man, I wish we could have more Star Wars. And then they re-released a bunch of them in the theaters in advance of the prequels, and the prequels came out, and there was like all this hype, and I remember being very hyped for the prequels. And let's see, the prequels came out in like
going to see them in the movie theater, yes. And like wearing Princess Leia buns.
Yes, and and I remember going to see it in the movie theater. I remember seeing The Phantom Menace a bunch of times. I remember seeing the Revenge of the Sith a bunch of times. In the theater. I didn't see the Clone Attack of the Clones as much. I was in college, I think, at that point. So I this is a point of, I think, contention with some fans is like the prequels and whether people like the prequels or don't like the prequels. I will admit fully that when they came out, I was like, oh, this is not what I was expecting. And I don't enjoy this as much as I did the original movies. And maybe that was because like, if you look at really like the clunkiness of both trilogies, like there are certainly clunky moments in the original trilogy as well, but maybe they were more forgiving of them because we're like, oh, well, that was in the 70s and
it's
we grew up with that stuff.
It's like endearing clunkiness.
Yes. But what I'd like to say is that because if you're coming to the show and you're like, oh, well, I love the prequels, those are my movies, and if you guys are going to shit on the prequels, like I don't want to listen to the show, I assure you that is not the intention of this show at all. Now I'll give you a moment to talk about how you feel about the prequels here, but I will say that while I didn't like them initially when they came out, having now seen like the body of work and the sequel trilogy and the comic books and like the Clone Wars cartoon series of what I've seen of that, like, and the Revenge of the Sith novel, I've actually grown to really appreciate and that part of the story and see like how it fits and how George Lucas was trying to do something different, and that some of the clunkiness I think is, and this is some of the things we'll be talking about in the show, is like the filmmaking aspect as well. As a filmmaker, I can't help but not talk about that stuff. That George Lucas was really doing something that was completely new and a revolutionary in terms of like the shooting, working with digital technology. And so I think some of that stuff looks a little weird to us now, and even then looked a little weird to us then.
I mean, almost any of the early CGI stuff that came out doesn't necessarily hold up visually anymore, but that doesn't mean it wasn't amazing when it came out.
Right. Like it was very like, and once we get to some of those movies, like even like shooting on a green screen, but then also learning like how do we compose depth in the frame. That was something we had to learn as we worked with more and more like digital green screen footage. And so George Lucas was really doing something like new that other people hadn't done before. So if you love the prequel trilogy and that's your jam, just know that like I love that, and I'm glad that you're here, and I hope that you will listen to the show, because I feel like when we get to the prequel trilogy, I'm looking forward to maybe pointing out some things here that I hopefully will bring you, Amanda, into the fold a little bit of the prequel trilogy. Let's let you
just
talk
say,
about it a little bit.
I remember seeing them in the movie theater and being so excited and walking out feeling actually very disappointed. Like it didn't seem to fit with what I knew and loved about Star Wars.
Fair.
And that feeling has not tremendously changed over time, although I definitely appreciate, after watching them in the machete order, their significance, you know, to the story, developing the story, I think is clear, and I have enjoyed that aspect. Let's just say I'm looking forward to seeing them with new eyes, because it's been, last time I rewatched them was in 2016 or 2017.
So it's been a while.
It's been a while, so I'm looking forward to rewatching them. Of course, I see the, the original trilogy. I've seen it since then, and I've also watched the last three movies,
the sequel trilogy,
more recently. So the last time I watched the prequels was at least 3-4 years ago. So I am looking forward to seeing them with new eyes.
Yeah, and I think that's what we're trying. I think that's what we'll try to do as we get to each movie, is like look at it. It's hard for me to look at some of these movies with fresh eyes. It's like they're like in my bones. Like they're like part of my genetic makeup at this point. Like it's really hard to separate. But I hope that I will see new things as we're like watching them for the show. But yeah, I would my experience with the fandom now on Twitter and everything, with people of generations that grew up with the prequel trilogy as their movies that really define their childhood, have helped me to really appreciate like what is really good about it and what the story is about. And I actually think that what the story is about is actually really relevant to like, I mean, George Lucas like was like predicting what was going to happen politically in our country with Star Wars. Like he literally predicted, like you can watch how everything kind of plays out in all of these movies, and they really were of their time. And those movies coming out in the early 2000s were like about the stuff that is plaguing us politically now. And so
okay, now I'm even more interested in going back
I
to
think
rewatch
when
them.
you look at it that way, because as I watched them this time, I was like, oh shit, like this is about, I mean, not to get into it too deeply, but because eventually we will watch all of the prequel trilogy movies, but like it is about how fascism is allowed to come in because democracy is given away. Because democracy, because people become complacent and they let fascism in to take over, and that feels very relevant. So I think the prequel trilogy really has. I think the prequel trilogy was about something I didn't expect at the time when it came out, And so I was like, oh, this isn't like Luke and Leia and Han like swashbuckling through some shit. Like it was different. And that was not what I wanted at the time. But now that I'm looking at it in the larger picture of the Star Wars universe, I'm like, wow, that's really fucking cool that he did something that was what he wanted to do, you know? And I do have a lot of affection for a lot of those characters now, especially Obi-Wan Kenobi. I mean, come on. Ewan McGregor, Obi-Wan Kenobi. So fucking great. Love him. But also like Anakin Skywalker and Padme and people that have, I think, you know, they've had such a big life outside of even just the movies, but in the novels and the animated series that really gave them a lot of depth that now I can go back to the movies and go, wow, okay, those are really interesting characters that really do have a place in the universe.
So for me, as like a fan of the sci-fi fantasy genre, I'm almost I really tend to go more towards fantasy rather than sci-fi. And one thing that I've always really loved about Star Wars is that it's it really walks the line between the two. Like it really blends the two in ways where like you have you know, media that are really obviously on the fantasy side and others that are very much more on the sci-fi side, and Star Wars blends them together because you've got all these magical beasts, these like you know, creatures, you've got
space wizards,
the Force, space wizards, exactly. So you know, if there are wizards in it, I'm there, and this is space wizards, so count me in.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm really excited about when we will talk about because I think like when we talk about the original trilogy, I hope we'll like see some fresh things in it. But obviously we're coming to that already with like a place of nostalgia. I'm looking forward especially to going to the prequel trilogy and really digging in and being like, oh my, okay, we're like, how does this fit in with like what else we know? We'll be covering mostly the live action stuff. At some point we may dive into some of the animated things. But for now we're really going to be digging into the live action and but I hope to try to bring in some information from all these books that I've read that will hopefully expand upon what we're seeing in the movies. I do think that the books, like Master and Apprentice, for example, is this really wonderful book, which is about Obi-Wan Kenobi and Qui-Gon Jinn like 7 years before The Phantom Menace, where, you know, and they're like how they didn't always get along and they're like on this like mission together, and it's like is Obi-Wan going to continue to be Qui-Gon's apprentice, or is Obi-Wan going to I'm sorry, is Obi-Wan going to continue to be Qui-Gon's apprentice, or you know, is Qui-Gon
going to fire him?
Well, it's more like he was offered a position on the Jedi Council, and if he takes that position, then Obi-Wan Kenobi can't be his apprentice anymore. And they had not been getting along. Anyway, I won't get too deeply into the book. We'll wait until we get to those movies, but I loved that book so much. And it's like, it's great to be able to spend more time with those characters. I wish Qui-Gon had a bigger role in the, cause he's great in the comics and the books, and he was in the movies for such a short time. Anyway, and then of course, you know, after The Revenge of the Sith came out, which I remember enjoying quite a bit in the theater. I will say I remember I enjoyed that movie quite a bit. I thought it led really nicely into the storyline of what is now called A New Hope. It felt like I was like, wow, okay, like this, you know, that was it was a movie that I really enjoyed. I remember seeing it in the theater quite a number of times.
Here's another fascinating childhood tidbit for the ways in which Star Wars intersected in our lives. I don't know if you remember this, but for years, we had a Darth Maul window stick that I got from the Park 12 Cobb Cinema that lived in the dining room and was like life-sized.
That thing scared the shit out of me.
Scared the shit out of you. Yeah, because he's like just in there.
It looked like he was huge, lurking in the window. So if you were, thank you for reminding me. I'd completely forgotten about that. If you were, and I'm not saying I didn't, I'm not saying I didn't. If you were sneaking out of the house, for example, in the middle of the night and trying to come back into the house, you could see Darth Maul knows. Watching you, and it's like, is that Darth Maul, or was somebody alerted to my absence?
And it's on the second story, so it was like somebody would be levitating up to the wall.
Hella stalking me, and it was very terrifying. Thank you. I've completely forgot about that. I remember that my mother Our mother went insane with the merchandise when the prequel trilogy came out. Insane. Do you remember all the cups? She had a whole bookcase full of the cup. She had to get every cup from, I don't know if it was McDonald's or fucking Burger King or what it was, but remember they were the heads. It was like Jar Jar Binks and like,
It was like Taco Bell or something.
Yes.
We had all the toys that were like, yeah. I think it was Taco Bell actually, which tells you how much she wanted those cups because she did not eat Taco Bell.
Taco Bell fan. So she was really just, choking down those tacos, hoping to get the, the next cup with the character lid on. It was like the whole part of it was like 4-inch character on top of the lid of the cup. And I remember she had a whole bookcase full of them.
It was like a majestic bust.
It was
a majestic bust.
It was a majestic bust. Yes. And there was like, she had so many of them.
Yeah.
I don't know that I wish she still had them. I would totally put them in my office, but somehow I doubt. Somehow I don't know where they ended up.
In the basement somewhere.
You know what? Mom doesn't throw anything away. They're probably in the basement somewhere.
Neither
I bet
do
I could get them. I don't either. Then Star Wars again went dormant. I mean, for me, I know that for many other fans, the Clone Wars series is what I love about Star Wars is that there are so many entry points as a fan. Maybe you came in at the original trilogy. Maybe you came in at the prequel trilogy. This is a podcast that accepts all of those people, except for like the only people I don't accept are the fan bros who feel like you have to like present some kind of specific resume that says that you are that you belong in the fandom. There are people like that. I am
a doctor.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's undisputed. I feel like I should. If anybody should be a doctor of Star Wars, I feel like I could.
I would award you an honorary doctorate of Star Wars.
I'll compose.
I'm going to make you a certificate.
Thank you. I'll hang it on my wall. Anyway, what I love about Star Wars is that there are so many entry points to the fandom. And for some people, the Clone Wars TV series, which came out a few years after Revenge of the Sith, was that entry point for them. And that show went on for 7 seasons with some breaks in between. And I've been watching it. I'm only into the 2nd season, but I am really loving it. I'm actually really enjoying it a lot. And I can see, I feel glad that there's like more stuff, more Star Wars for me to dive into and really immerse myself in. And so for me, because I wasn't watching the Clone Wars series, Star Wars as a series kind of went dormant for me for a while. But then George Lucas sold Lucasfilm to Disney. And then in the 2010s, when did the first one come out? I know The Last Jedi came out in like 2015. How old was it? 2013? 2014?
I would have
when The Force Awakens came out?
I would have to look it up, to be honest.
I remember taking Charlotte to see it. So at least my youngest was old enough to go see The Force Awakens. But Lucas, my middle child...
4.
I want to say it was 2014, maybe. I'm sorry. I know this is a Star Wars podcast and we should be super accurate about our dates, but I did not look this up. I want to say it was 2014 and that The Last Jedi came out in maybe 2016. And then I know Rise of Skywalker was 2019. But when The Force Awakens came out, I was fucking shit my pants excited about it. I don't know if you remember the level of excitement because we saw The Force Awakens together for the first time in the theater. We bought tickets for opening night. You, me, and the husbands.
Yeah,
you remember anything about that?
It was like a midnight showing. It was a midnight showing, and I was afraid that my husband Nick was going to fall asleep because it's just like way past his bedtime.
Yeah, Grandpa doesn't do so good after 10 p.m. But he stayed awake
real early. He wakes up real early. So.
He's not like us. We're night owls, and he wakes up like voluntarily at the crack of dawn. Like his body just naturally does that. It's weird. Do you remember anything about that when we went to go see The Force Awakens? I remember it was packed.
Just that that it was amazing.
Yeah.
That I felt like my love was renewed for the series.
It was...
I was nervous. I remember being nervous that I would feel like I did after I had seen the prequels. Yeah. Like, wow, I can't believe they did this to me again. But no, it was incredible.
Yeah. I remember being exhilarated. I remember the theater was packed. We sat somewhere in the back because
because we don't get places on time. So
we don't get places on time, and my husband will not sit in the front. He will just not sit in the front. He won't.
No, I
do
won't
it.
sit in the front either. What
I don't mind it.
Are you?
But The Force Awakens was. I mean, we'll get to it more deeply when we actually cover those movies. But when Rey calls the lightsaber to her hand, and they begin that lightsaber fight where she is fighting, I cried. I cried.
The clapping. The theater erupts in clapping.
It was everything I ever wanted. I love Princess Leia. Love her so much. But I was like, and again, I didn't have Ahsoka Tano, who is in the Clone Wars, in my life. So I didn't have that. Like, I was like a woman who's a Jedi. Oh my God. It was like, It was amazing to me. It was it was very emotional for me. And of course, like I loved all the characters. I loved the way that they incorporated the original trilogy characters while giving us new characters to care about. And I cared about them so quickly. I loved Finn and Poe and Kylo Ren. Adam Driver is an amazing actor. I have a whole fucking podcast about him.
She's got a wall calendar of Adam Driver.
I do. My co-host for the Adam and Andy podcast gave me a Adam Driver calendar for my birthday, and a candle. A candle that says "smells like Adam Driver." Not
positively
lying.
sultry.
Yeah. But in all seriousness, and this isn't a podcast about Adam Driver because I have a whole show about that. But I love I always loved him as an actor. I thought he was really incredible when he was on Girls. That's when I saw him first. And so when they announced that he was like most of the other actors I hadn't heard of, I knew of John Boyega from Attack the Block. So that was very exciting. Didn't know much about
Daisy
Oscar
Ridley.
Isaac. I didn't know anything about Daisy Ridley. So I was like, not sure what to expect. I was like, how does Adam Driver fit into the Star Wars universe? I am so intrigued. The reveal that he was like in the movie that he was playing Han and Leia's son, I was like, my mind was blown.
Yeah.
Everybody in that movie I enjoy them so much.
We spent hours debating his relationship with Rey. Like, are they siblings?
Yes,
who is she related to? And we spent hours and hours and hours talking about this.
Yeah, at that time, I did not see the romantic connection between them until the second movie. So in The Force Awakens, I was still like, oh, maybe they're siblings. Which now feels.
I mean,
gross.
it's not like it would have been the first time that Star Wars ripped that rug underneath our feet.
Star Wars likes a little incest. It's not afraid to have a little bit of brother sister kissing. Anyway, I love the sequel trilogy. I fucking love it so much. It is I watch it constantly. I think that I know that for a lot of people it didn't wrap up in a way that was satisfying. But I think in time, regardless of whether you love everything that happened in it, I think over time when we look back, even the people that are like a little bit like, oh, I didn't like that one, or I didn't like that part of the sequel, I think I think that trilogy of movies will really be revered in the Star Wars story because the acting is so good, and like they did so many new things with the Star Wars universe, and it shot fantastically. It looks gorgeous. And they've created all these characters that I deeply love, and I hope they'll come back to them. I do hope that we'll see more with those characters.
I hope
eventually.
That we won't have to wait 20 years to do that.
Well, here's my theory, and I'll just say it right now in the first episode. I feel like in 10 years, we'll see more content with those characters. That seems to be the cycle. It's like Star Wars fans are alternatively the most beautiful, incredible, amazing, goddesses that I've ever encountered. But there's also a sector of the fandom that's very toxic and angry and like entitled about Star Wars. And there's a big vocal group in that area that's like, fuck the sequel trilogy. But I think as the kids that were growing up with the sequel trilogy grow older, I think the voices of how wonderful the sequel trilogy is will get louder. And
I mean, it won me back.
Yeah. And I absolutely love it. I don't know how you can't, but there are a lot of people that don't. And I think that
it might actually be my favorite trilogy.
Right now, well, I guess one day, I don't want to go in here and rank all the movies. Maybe we'll do that at some point.
Yeah, at
But
the
I would
very
say
end,
right
maybe.
now, like The Last Jedi is my favorite Star Wars movie right now. Followed and Empire Strikes Back. It's really hard. Those two are really perfect films for me, and I adore them. And they like neck and neck constantly. But I absolutely love the sequel trilogy. Anyway, my prediction is that in 10 years, after some of the dust has settled with some of the more grumpy grump fans in the community, I think that we'll see more content. I hope, and it'll also give the actors that have been in the film some time to go off and do other things. They've all said in one way or another that they would come back to the story if it was the right story. So I think that we will see more of them. I hope. Now, secret news. It's not secret. Everybody knows this. Ryan Johnson, who many people, I'm just going to come out. I'm going to out myself right now. I am a Raylo. I am. I fucking love that. I ship the shit out of that ship. And a lot of, and I didn't come into the fandom that way. I was converted by the beautiful storytelling. But a lot of people love Ryan Johnson and his take on the Star Wars universe. I remember going to see The Last Jedi and going like, wow, like, I don't know if I like this or not. Like, there were things that I liked about it that I really liked about it. And I left the theater going, wow, I don't know how I feel about that. And I think it's because now that I look back on it, the more that I watch it, and like I said, it is my favorite of the Star Wars movies now, is because it did something different. It did things unexpected. It introduced new elements. And I think it perfectly blended the aesthetics and the tone of the prequel trilogy with the original trilogy into something new. And so I think for a lot of people that was like, oh, I'm being listened to, because there were aspects of the sequel trilogy where there was some effort to kind of erase the prequel trilogy, I think, and not include it. And The Last Jedi really included some of that in that movie. And for a lot of people, like I said, the prequel trilogy that's what brought them to Star Wars. And so they don't want to feel left out, you know? And so I really like Ryan Johnson's take on the Star Wars universe. He is still listed on the site as being he's
like
going
a
to be
content creator, or
right. He is supposedly creating some kind of trilogy for the Star Wars universe. Nobody knows what it's about.
Love Ryan Johnson, and I'm here for that.
Yeah, I'm secretly hoping that he will maybe take on a future with these characters. Like, he'll be tasked with creating what happens for them later.
I mean, going back to like Brick and Looper,
God,
like
Brick.
all of that work.
Oof,
I love Ryan Johnson.
I absolutely love him. I always have. I was very excited when he came in.
When I saw him attached to the movie, I was like, yes, we are going to be getting something good.
Yeah, so I hope to see him back in, maybe even taking the reins with these characters again. It is possible that he'll be doing a completely new universe. Star Wars has really been rolling out all these stories about the High Republic, which is an era that takes place before the the prequel trilogy, like way before the Republic, like, you know, back when the Jedi were kind of at the height of their power. So it's possible he may be telling a story in that universe. But I am holding out hope that we'll see him, you know, giving us some more of Rey and Finn and Poe and Ben Solo and maybe even Hux. I mean, I know Hux got killed at the end. I'm going to put that in quotes. Killed during the Rise of Skywalker. But I think we know that
such a good bad.
No, he never got the chance to be the big bad. And I really wanted Hux to get that chance.
Like really rising through the ranks of bad. And he put in the time, you know?
He really put in the time. It's like he was working towards that PhD in evil. And they just never let him go all the way. And no one, I feel like you can get shot in the chest with a blaster in Star Wars and live. I mean, they cut Darth Maul in half and he lived.
Yeah, that was because I didn't watch any of the, the cartoons, which I'd like to go back and watch now.
Yes.
When Darth Maul reemerged, I remember being like,
Yeah, that was
I'm gonna need to
confusing
Google
for
that
some
on
people.
the way home.
Yeah, what's up with
Yeah.
that? Yeah, so I mean, and Fennec Shan from the Mandalorian, she gets shot in the chest or in the torso or something, and she gets given some robotic parts and comes back in the second season of The Mandalorian. So I feel like no one's ever really gone, as they say. So I hold out
Not
hope.
unless you turn into a Force ghost. Dead isn't dead until you're a Force ghost.
If you're a Force ghost, like that's it. And we didn't. And by the way, we did not see a Force ghost of Ben Solo, so I feel like he's not really gone either. So those are my thoughts on that. But we do have a Patty Jenkins who wrote and directed Wonder Woman. She's doing the Squadrons movie, which and we have Taika Waititi doing a Star Wars movie as well. And that's going to be fucking cool and crazy.
This is what I'm saying is that, and then we have the other live action movies, which I'd also like for us to watch.
Yes.
Solo and
I love
Rogue
Solo.
One.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Rogue One.
Yeah, I feel like the Star Wars universe has found a way to build stories that are centered around the similar sort of themes and settings that keep the audience familiar and grounded with what they know, but are always finding ways to build on that and give us new stories. And there's not very many franchises, like media, movie, book franchises and storylines that have done that successfully.
I agree.
Think about Dune, for example. Like you've got
we'll
Dune
see.
books.
Dune
I know. Well,
so
this is another example of like a book that I've read. But I've read the books. I've watched the the really weird movie.
I'm a Dune newbie, so
yeah. The miniseries was really well done and very faithful to the books, but it hasn't really nobody's gone back and tried to grow that series it's coming now. They're going to bring it to us now in the first movie, but we don't have there's a million Dune books, but I don't know that everybody's read every single Dune book out there. They haven't been growing it over time. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah, I think there's a lot of potential in the Star Wars universe. I would like to see them go somewhere new. I would like to see I know I just said I wanted them to see them return to the sequel trilogy characters, and I do. What I would like to see is for them to return, and I didn't even include Rose Tico in that group of people that I want to see back, but I definitely want to see more Rose. I'd like to see them, but not shackled to the original trilogy characters. As much as I love the sequel trilogy, I feel like there was a lot of, we've also got to wrap up the story of Luke and Leia and Han and Palpatine, who somehow came back. We'll get into that. But there was a lot of wrapping that up as well. I'd love to see what does a story with the sequel trilogy characters look like where they're not necessarily, they're not divorced from the past, because you can't be in this kind of universe, but not necessarily as wrapped up in those. What does a new storyline look for them? I love that they've gone into the High Republic era and there's all these new characters there. I love that they've taken this approach where they're putting out all this comic book and physical a printed written word media about a new era, which I assume that we'll be revisiting that. Although then I say that, but then they're like, we're going to put out a Lando show. And I'm like, fuck yeah, give me that Lando show. I want that Lando show. Please let it be Donald Glover. Actually, I'd like a little Donald Glover, a little bit of Billy D. Let's get a little bit of both. Let's mix and match.
Yeah. Let's have Billy D. Some flashbacks going on.
Let's have Billy D having a cup of coffee on the veranda and then thinking about his past. And then we cut to flashbacks with, the whole episode is Donald Glover on an adventure. I'm fucking into it. Give it to me. I want it.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. And this is how Star Wars has grown, because they are continuing to generate new characters and new ways for audiences to engage in the stories.
Yeah.
But other franchises like Dune, how many times are we going to remake the first Dune book? This is going to be the third
a lot.
remaking. This is the third remaking. They just haven't found their footing to make to grow that series and to grow those stories in a way that's connecting with audiences. So maybe this will be our chance when the new movie comes out this fall. But we'll have to see.
We'll see. I mean, I'll go see it. I don't know shit about Dune. I really don't. despite being a huge nerd, I am mostly interested in Star Wars. I do watch some fantasy and sci-fi a lot. And I love Alien, and I love Escape from New York, and like I'm into and The Thing and all that stuff. But a lot of like my devotion to the genre is based in Star Wars. It's like I was saying, like we've got this VR headset, and I am like I've tried to play other games. I only care about Star Wars games. It's like if it's not Vader Immortal or Tales from the Galaxy's Edge, I'm like I just can't. I can't be bothered to care about it. you know. Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about where we're going to go with the show. Now that we've talked a lot about Star Wars and our relationship to it, that was a nice little trip down memory lane, I think.
Yeah. I'm glad we could bring the wall stick Darth Maul back in because I've been thinking a lot about him lately.
Like he was literally like, just to explain to the audience what he was like stuck to the window. It was like literally a window sticky.
It was like a torso
was
up,
his
like
whole
movie
torso.
theater window sticky. Yes. He had his like lightsaber.
So he was several feet tall.
Probably like at least 3 feet tall. Yeah, it's torso. He was torso up, and he's looking right in the window at you.
Yeah. It was. I wish we still had that. I would put that up in my house in a heartbeat. So let's talk about where we're gonna go with the show. So, well, let's talk about what we bring to the show. So I'm gonna bring my obsession with Star Wars, obviously, but also the filmmaking aspect of it. The a little bit of like literature and film analysis, I guess, as well as the technique of filmmaking. And I'm going to bring in my knowledge of the sort of the ancillary materials, the comics and the books, and try to wrap that into our discussions. But what I'm really excited is about, like, this is why we're doing the show. Like, I've been thinking about like doing a Star Wars podcast for ages, but I was like, well, we got to have something that's different to say about the series because there's so many Star Wars podcasts, and that's wonderful because people just absolutely love Star Wars. But what can we do that's new? And then I was talking to Amanda about like what would it be like if we did a Star Wars podcast, and your take on what you wanted to talk about was very interesting to me. So I'm going to just let you talk a little bit about what you're planning to bring to the show.
Well, so for me, I am principally interested in sort of two main things to focus on. And one is what I would call the Star Wars biomes. Mm-hmm. And that is looking at sort of the creatures and like the ecosystems that we see on these different planets, and thinking about how they can serve as parallels for some of the creatures and the ecosystems that we have in our own Earth and our own galaxy, right? But I'm also, I'm an anthropologist. And so my other main interest would be what I would call like Star Wars and society. Mm-hmm. So various aspects of, culture that are present in the Star Wars universe, things like their religion and the storytelling that they do, not the storytelling of the narrative of the movie, but rather the storytelling that is done within the movie about their own universe.
Mm-hmm. So their own mythology.
And things like, social stratification and the way that Star Wars thinks about things like gender. So those kinds of aspects are what I'm really interested in as well.
I'm really excited. I'm excited for you to bring these ideas to the conversation, to give me a fresh look at something that I love, that I've seen a lot. So I'm excited about that, selfishly for me. And we got you a book, right? There's a book. It's right there somewhere near your desk.
I've got them right here, actually.
We got you a bunch of research books. So we've got Star Wars, The Wildlife, a field guide. I
really desperately wish that this was an...
Yeah,
obviously.
Nice.
I really wish that this was an updated field guide, because it does not include stuff from, the what do you call it? The sequel trilogy.
Yeah, I think it mostly goes through the prequel trilogy, I believe.
Right. But if you haven't got a copy of this yourself and you are a nerd for things wildlife like I am, this is called The Wildlife of Star Wars, a field guide.
Yeah.
And it's actually done like a sort of like a field guide that you would find for any sort of like North American birds or something like that. And they've got these amazing illustrations and they've got all this information. So I'm excited to sort of bring, basically what I want to do is when we watch the movies,
Yeah.
go and dig in and do a little bit of research as well. That's kind of my process. I got to do a lot of reading to figure out my ideas.
I'll be brushing up on my comic knowledge. I'll be brushing up on the documentaries about the making of these films, and hoping to bring in some little tidbits about that.
So when we first started talking about doing this, I thought, wow, am I qualified to speak on such things?
It hasn't stopped anybody on the internet before. So why should it now?
Well, so I started digging into the peer review literature, like you do when you're a scientist, to see what other stuff has been written about the Star Wars, biomes and the Star Wars societies.
Now, there was that Star Wars biomes thing on Disney Plus.
Yeah, about maybe 3 weeks ago, I saw a title pop up on Disney Plus that was Star Wars biomes,
and you were upset about it because we had already talked about doing the show.
I was like, great. Now the thing that I really want to talk about is it's already been done, and I don't have any. But then we watched it, and it's just like drone footage. It was
just drone footage.
The planets.
It was very soothing.
So to me,
I was like, this is great.
Yeah,
I would sleep to this.
It's further research. Like, I'm going to go back and look at those because it shows us some interesting sort of things, I think, about the different creatures that we see in the Star Wars universe. And like, for instance, this one looks like in a free ranging, population might be a herd animal,
So it'll be interesting to do things like talk about the banthas and the Tuscan, the Tuscan guys and all that, and like what they're. Yeah, I'm excited to talk about things like that, or like what is the plant life and flora and fauna of Dagobah, for example. Like we've got a lot of desert
why
planets.
Do we see so many? Why do we see so many amphibian-like creatures in desert worlds? Like,
that's something I know you're excited to talk about. What are the Hutts doing on a desert planet, given that they are giant slugs?
Somebody get them some humidifiers.
Cool.
The other thing I wanted to note about the so my search into the peer review literature is that maybe unsurprisingly, but also surprisingly, nobody's really writing about these topics, these ideas. Like when you are looking for peer reviewed, and for those of you who are unfamiliar with what that term means in the science world, it means that somebody with some good qualifications and some good research background has written an article that then other people who are viewed as experts in the field read it and decide if it's good enough to be published. And then they give you a bunch of feedback and you got to do your edits and resubmit, etc.
So basically the opposite of what happens on Twitter.
So there's like not a lot about the things that I'm really interested in talking about out there in the format that I was expecting to find. There's a lot of stuff that's written obviously about the movies from a cinematic perspective.
Yes, there's a lot of film
industry.
theory.
And the only other major paper that I found that gave me a little chuckle was a paper out of like a marriage and family studies type journal where the fact that somebody had not watched Star Wars was a main reason why somebody had listed for divorce.
Wow. That's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
But okay. Well, you know what? Maybe that's the person who's really obsessed. Maybe it's not me. I think it would be, I think I could be married to somebody who hasn't seen Star Wars. I think it would be I don't know if we would get that far. Like to the point of marriage, if they couldn't understand that aspect of me, first of all, I certainly couldn't be married to somebody who was openly hostile about Star Wars. I feel like that would be grounds for divorce. If you were openly hostile. So lastly, why a Star Wars podcast? Why in a sea of Star Wars podcasts should we deign to create another one? What are you?
Well, I'm not exactly sure. I'm just here for the ride. You love the Star Wars. I love hanging out with you.
So this is a chance to hang out.
It is, and it's also a chance to like dig in a little more deeply into, something that you're really excited in, something in a dimension that I'm excited in. So, yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I
sure wish I had a better answer to that, but it just seems like a fun thing to do.
Honestly, yeah, I think it's important, and I want this to be fun. So I think we're going to keep it fun. That's what we want. I just like I've been podcasted for like 6 years now, I've discovered that I adore. First of all, I adore podcasting. I love podcasting. I've listened to podcasts. There's a lot of Star Wars podcasts that I currently listen to, but nothing makes me happier than talking at length about something I love, and it's kind of insane that I haven't had a Star Wars podcast at this point. I love Star Wars so much, and I spend so much of my life consumed thinking about, reading about, and watching Star Wars that it just feels right to be talking about it, and I'm just so excited about what you want to talk about, like things that I hadn't really considered and that I'm very eager to dig into about it, that it gives it a whole fresh breath to me, you know?
Well, I'm thrilled to be invited on this journey with you because we already spend, I would say, a significant amount of our time when we hang out
constantly
already talking about Star Wars.
In fact, maybe this will allow you to go save it for the podcast. So when I start going on and on about it, you know what, save it for the podcast. So as for what you can expect on the show, we had talked a lot about what are we going to watch first? Like what's going to be the approach here? And initially we were going to watch it in what is a new order that I've heard called the nesting doll order. Originally we were going to do that, which was, now you referenced the machete order, which I'll talk about in a second. But the nesting doll order is like sort of digging into the mythology of the family. So it actually starts with The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, then goes to A New Hope, then Empire Strikes Back, then the prequel trilogy, Revenge of the Sith, then rolling into the last Return of the Jedi, and then the Rise of Skywalker. And that's the sort of the order. And we were going to do that. And then and I had thought about the machete order, which is of course 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3.
No. It's 4, 5,
right,
1,
4,
2,
5,
3,
1, 2, 3,
6,
and then the sequel trilogy, which I've also watched it in that order. I love that shakes up your point of view about the story, and I would like to revisit, especially. I've heard it called the Nesting Doll Order. I've heard it called the Legend of Luke Skywalker. But I actually think that the Nesting Doll Order or the Legend of Luke Skywalker really puts the sequel trilogy characters front and center, which is really interesting to me.
Yeah.
I'd love to revisit that as a way to kind of look at Star Wars through a new lens. But honestly, we're going to be real straightforward about this. And it seemed like it was a good idea to just start at the beginning. So we're going to start with the original trilogy, A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and the Return of the Jedi. So we're just going to kind of start there. And then, but the other reason was because we were hoping to do that and then rewatch all the Mandalorian episodes, so seasons 1 and 2, and then roll right into Book of Boba Fett, which is coming out in December. So that's kind of our big picture. And then we're hoping that as other parts of Star Wars media come out, as we get to the Obi-Wan Kenobi show and the Cassian Andor series, that there'll be opportunities to revisit the prequel trilogy before we see the Obi-Wan show, and that there'll be an opportunity to revisit
and I want to swing back around to Rogue One. Yeah, Rogue One and Solo. Like, I truly love those. I have not felt so destroyed by a movie as I have Rogue One. Like, there's very few movies out there that I really I do typically avoid movies that I'm pretty sure are going to bum me out big time. But Rogue One was a gut punch. Absolutely gutted me, but I couldn't stop watching.
Oh, it's a great movie. So I think Rogue One will roll nicely into the Cassian Andor show. So we're going to kind of figure it out as we go. We don't know when those other live action shows are being released. But we're going to try to plan our rewatches of the existing material around what is coming up, so that we're kind of like looking at the story, we're like rolling into the story, and then obviously we're going to go back to the sequel trilogy as well at some point. We're just
also a very special Christmas episode.
Oh yeah, we've watched the Star Wars Holiday Special. You and I made you watch it.
Talk about a gut punch.
It was a gut punch. It was a gut punch. Weirdly, my kids liked it. I remember Charlotte liked it. I don't know but there's a ton of stuff now that there's like the Ewok movies are now on Disney Plus. I haven't seen those since I was a kid, so I feel like we could have fun revisiting those. I feel like I feel like we're not going to run out of things to do anytime soon. I think we'll probably circle around to the animated shows at some point. As you said, you've been interested in that. There's a lot of different worlds I've already noticed in the animated shows that because it's animated, there's like you can really kind of expand. You know, you don't have to worry about like going on location or finding a location. Of course, we can get into this when we talk about The Mandalorian, but the way that they've really revolutionized shooting live action with the volume. Have you heard about this yet? Have we talked about this? The volume?
No.
We'll talk about that when we get more into The Mandalorian, but it's basically a soundstage where they've got this like projector around the whole soundstage that they project. You know, did you know that all those scenes in The Mandalorian not shot in a desert? It's in a studio, and they're projecting the background around them. And but as the camera moves, the projection adjusts like the lens of a camera.
Wow.
So that it's changing the perspective. And anyway, it's incredible. We'll talk more about it when we get to The Mandalorian, but all like Star Wars is for me a story that really is about the characters and my love of the characters first and foremost. You know, those characters for me that I fell in love with obviously were Han Solo and Luke Skywalker and, you know, Princess Leia and C-3PO and Chewbacca. And like, so I really felt, and Lando, and I fell in love with those characters. And over time, they've introduced me to more and more characters to fall in love with. But it's also, as a filmmaker, I'm very excited about the technology and how Star Wars continues to push the boundaries of technology to really give you like this really fleshed out world. And so I'm excited to talk about that as well. I don't know. Any final thoughts for you on where we're going or what you're looking forward to?
Well, so for me as a sci-fi fantasy fan, one thing that I'm really interested in is the world building and the way that these worlds are not just the characters. There's lots of things that are going on in the background that have been really clearly thought about and really clearly constructed and give a much deeper sense of the sort of timeline of the history of these places. And so, you know, that's something that that brings me to my interest in like their whole entire biome and their whole entire society, where what we're seeing is sort of a snapshot and a little segment of that. You know, but it's a part of this larger power structure, and it's a part of a larger sort of, you know, a larger society essentially.
Yay. I'm so excited about this. So, listeners, by the time this goes up, we are going to have some kind of social media. I don't really have the information on that yet, but there will be some kind of Twitter and whatnot. But for now, you will be able to find the show once I get it up there on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, all those places,
all the medias, all the
regular suspects. And so I hope that you will subscribe to the show. I don't think there'll be too much longer to wait. This is going to be like a bi-weekly show, which means like every 2 weeks there'll be a new episode. Maybe there'll be more episodes coming out when Book of Boba Fett is out. We'll see how that goes. We might end up putting out more when there's a weekly live action show out. But for now, it's going to be bi-weekly. And the next time that you join us, we'll be talking about A New Hope, 1977. The thing that started it all, and the wildlife. I know you're going to have so many creatures. You know, it was, I think the 44th anniversary. Creatures. The 44th anniversary of A New Hope was this last week of that movie being released. Okay. All right. Well, I'm excited. And I'm excited to go on this journey with you, digging into all this stuff that I deeply love and finding out new things and learning about all the creatures. And I'm so fucking psyched.
Yeah. Yep. Me too.